Let's take a look at the 3 best tips for sound making and sound design. These tips are applicable for all sound designers, whether you are creating sound effects for games, sound design for films, or making sound effects for sale. Hi, my name is Simon. On this channel I help sound designers create unique sound effects so they can stand out from the crowd. I worked as a freelance sound designer now for many years, and the 3 tips I share with you in this video are the most important ones I have learned. So let's dive into it. Tip number 1 is to close your eyes. I mean, not all the time, because that would make everything really hard, but do it way more often than you think. And why is this important? Because you have so many plugins, meters and analytic tools in your DAWs. And I mean, don't get me wrong here, I love analyzing my sounds with visualizers and all the metering has its place, but we're working with sounds, and as soon as you close your eyes, you focus solely on listening. When you close your eyes, you don't get any visual distractions from your surrounding or from your tools. You don't think about stuff like what sample libraries you used, whether the sound is clipping internally, if you should use one of your other 15 saturation plugins, if the track is in the right color, if the stereo spread looks weird, or anything like that. You just hear the sound. You can think of it like this. Think of it as cooking. When you cook, you can follow a recipe, you can check the colors and the textures of the food, you can even smell it. But ultimately, what matters is if it tastes good. A good cook tastes the food throughout the process to ensure that they are on the right track. Shouldn't we, as sound designers, do the same? Taste the sound? Not just like look at it and smell it. Listening with our eyes closed is the purest way to access what's really in our designs. Do that throughout the process and your sound design will reach the next level. And guess what? Just listening to the sounds without any visual distractions is exactly what your client will do. They don't have all your plugins open. They don't have all your metering. They will just listen. And if your sound design doesn't really translate with just sound, you can't really start an argument with your client and tell them, well, this sound is actually really good because I used this specific sample library or this certain plugin or this perfect mic. Nothing of that matters. If the sound doesn't translate naked, then it doesn't work, and the harsh truth is that you need to go back to the drawing board of it and fix that again. But the good thing is that when you listen to the sound design with your eyes closed, then you will find those issues and you will fix them before they reach your client. And believe it or not, but this tip about listening with your eyes closed applies even when you're working with visuals. Start with making the sound design fit the scene, then listen to it with your eyes closed. If you can't hear what's happening in the scene, I mean really hear the story taking shape with just your sound design, you need to fix that. Your sound design must translate the story of the visuals. This is a great metric to see if you clutter the scene with too many sounds, you get the narrative right, built the ambience and the space correctly, and so on. So if you can see the scene with your eyes closed, you have done it right. And I get a pro tip here too. If you want feedback on your work, and this works even if you don't know anyone who works with audio, just ask a friend to listen to your sound design with their eyes closed and then describe what they hear. If they can't tell you what happens in the scene, you should revisit that sound design again. Before we check out the next tip, I have a free gift for you. If you are new to sound design and you want to start to apply for internships, jobs, or collaborate with others, you will need a show reel. And that can feel like a big task and can also be a bit hard to know what's expected of a show reel and where to start with it. That's why I put together this little free cheat sheet for you. This shows you what you should have in your show reel, what you should avoid in it, how long it should be, and everything else that you need to get started with it. The cheat sheet is totally free, of course, and it's linked both in the description below and in the comments. So go ahead and download that, and now let's continue with tip 2. Tip number 2 is to reverse engineer sounds. This to me is the best way to learn how to create sound effects in any genre. Reverse engineer or recreate sounds is often really hard at first, but it gets easier with practice. But for some reason sound designers often think they never have to practice at all, and I mean this is so weird to me. Look at athletes. They practice during the week and then they play matches on tournaments on weekends. That means that they are practicing way more than they compete, and guess what they are practicing on? Their weaknesses. Are you doing that? Are you picking the hardest sounds you know and then try to recreate them? The field of sound design is really fast-paced. When an opportunity arises, you need to be ready, and the best way to be prepared is to practice. And it's often way better to recreate sounds rather than doing your own redesigns of them. Why? Because recreation of sound is black and white. You always have the original to compare your design with. I mean, sound design is very abstract, and making a redesign is very much based on your aesthetics and your creative choices. And as a practice, this often gets way too subjective. But with recreation of sounds, you know exactly if you're on the right track or not. And if you ask for feedback from someone, they know what you are trying to do, so the feedback gets both better and more effective. When practicing on recreating sounds, you learn so much about how sound effects are structured and created. Many sound effects sound incredibly complex, but when you start to dissect them and then rebuild them up again, you teach yourself how to make them your own way while you build your skill sets and your confidence. And this is the key here. You're not teaching yourself how to make copies of other sound designers' work. You teach yourself how to make those sounds in your own way, with your own tools. And then, when you know how to do that, you can start to create the sounds that you have in your head. And remember, while practicing, don't forget to close your eyes more often than you think. The third tip is for when you start to collaborating with others or communicating with your clients. It's applicable for any kind of collaboration, whether you're in a game jam or creating sound effects for a developer, but also when communicating with a film director or a private client. The tip is to send early drafts of your work. What do I mean by this, and why is it important? Well, sounds are, as we already have talked about, very abstract, and that makes them really hard to communicate around. You might think that you know exactly what a collaborator wants, only to find out that they wanted something entirely different. So when you discuss the sounds that you are making for a project, say this: "This sounds great. My plan is to create a first draft of sounds and then send them over to you. These are not the final versions, I just make sure that I'm heading in the right direction for the product before I make more." This little phrase does 5 great things for you. 1. It shows that you want to be a team player that listens to the other ones in the team and together make the product as good as possible. 2. It demonstrates that you're focused on making the best sounds for the product, not just cool sounds for your own ego. 3. It creates a working environment where it's okay to show ideas and try out stuff instead of trying to create a perfect sound without knowing exactly what that even means for the product. 4. It makes people want to work with you because most people don't know exactly what sounds they want, so taking small steps like this invites them to figure that out as you go. And 5, it saves you and your collaborators a lot of time. Creating custom sounds takes a lot of time, so knowing you're on the right track is invaluable. And I have a bonus tip here. Don't do the mistake of just doing this in the beginning of the project. After the first step, once you have sent some sounds and received some feedback, do it again. Respond with, "Okay, great, I'll make those tweaks and I send the new ones over to you." Then you can increase the workload in each round with more and more sounds on each of them. Just do it in small steps so you always know that you're heading in the right direction.